U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio began a two-day tour of the Caribbean aimed at further restricting the Cuban humanitarian mission, attacking Venezuela's energy sovereignty and reducing China's commercial presence in the region. In Ecuador on Tuesday, a containment dam located in the Cape River collapsed due to rains in the middle of the oil spill remediation works underway after the March 13th incident. And the Palestinian National Council denounces the creation of a Zionist agency to push for the expulsion of the people of Gaza. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. On Tuesday, the Secretary of the United States, Marco Rubio, began a two-day tour of the Caribbean aimed at further restricting the Cuban humanitarian mission, attacking Venezuela's energy sovereignty and reducing China's commercial presence in the region. The U.S. envoy's diplomatic agenda includes trips to Jamaica, Guyana, and Suriname, which intend to defend his decision of restricting visas to officials linked to the Cuban medical missions. The action against the country's medical personnel has been repeatedly denounced by the Cuban government. In addition, Rubio is expected to meet with Guyanese President Irfan Ali under the pretext of ensuring the country's energy production, with the intention of ignoring the lack of delimitation of the Essequibo region, an attempt against Venezuelan sovereignty over the territory. And on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an order that establishes the obligation to present documents certifying citizenship in order to register and vote in the country's elections. According to the leader, states are not adequately verifying voter citizenship, which would jeopardize the integrity of the electoral process. With the order, the Election Assistance Commission will implement a new requirement in its mail-in voter registration form requiring documentary proof of citizenship. This action is framing the repeated claims of the head of state about electoral fraud in the 2020 presidential elections and his persecution of migrants. And on Tuesday, U.S. President Trump National Security Advisor Mike Waltz took full responsibility for messages sent on a private messaging group where members of the executive branch discussed the Yemen attacks and other sensitive foreign policy and defense issues. Waltz admitted to setting up the chat room, which included Vice President James Vance, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and even the Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. The scandal unfolded after the editor of a media outlet was mistakenly included. The executive branch has tried to downplay the seriousness of the situation, but the appearance of several of those involved before congressional committees has deepened a conflict that has already drawn international reactions. And during the Grandparents of the Homeland Center inauguration, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, reaffirmed his pledge to the Venezuelan people to repatriate the migrants detained in the United States. The head of state, Nicolás Maduro, pointed out during the event that they are already pursuing legal action against the Salvadoran government and that a habeas corpus appeal was filed demanding the release of the Venezuelan migrants who were kidnapped by the U.S. and held in concentration camps in El Salvador. For his part, the Venezuelan leader pointed out that the actions of the United States against Venezuelan migrants are a violation of their human rights and demanded respect for the same. In this regard, President Maduro pointed out that the bands of coyotes were controlled from the U.S. by leaders of the Venezuelan far right. And in this context, thousands of citizens rallied through the streets of Caracas in support of the Venezuelan migrants taken under duress to El Salvador by Donald Trump's administration. Venezuelan authorities explained that the rallies are a response to those who want to mistreat Venezuelans in the world. Also, at the same time of this activity, in all the Bolivar squares of the country, the collection of signatures in support of their prompt release continued. And now we have a short break coming up. First, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Wednesday, the Brazilian Supreme Court judges unanimously accepted the complaint against former President Jair Bolsonaro, ordering him to stand trial for his role in a violent plot to seize power through a military coup. In addition, the court decided that 7 other close allies of the former president should also stand trial for crimes, including involvement in an armed criminal organization and violently attempted to abolish Brazilian democracy. For his part, Bolsonaro rejected the charges in a WhatsApp statement sent to allies as the hearing began on Tuesday, calling the case against him an aberration, the like of which has never been seen before. The ruling leaves the far-right populist facing a possible jail sentence of more than 40 years. And the Colombian President Gustavo Petro denounced a new coup d'etat attempt based on the manipulation of the supply of medicines. The Colombian head of state informed so at the government headquarters in the capital city of Bogota, where the Council of Ministers was held when referring to several aspects related to the health of the people. The progressive government is attempting a reform in the sector which will guarantee equitable access for all to a quality service. The proposal has been strongly rejected by sectors of the extreme right related to the health business.
Because they want to overthrow Petro, because they want a coup d'etat. They are looking in the commission of the chamber to make it happen. There is only a difference of 1 vote. And we have to know it, because otherwise the people will be caught off guard. It is the way they are preparing a coup d'etat. This is the same as with Allende, only that there was no such complexity in the time of Allende, but with Allende they were hoarding food to get the people to come out to protest against Allende, and that ended in thousands of deaths, and a dictatorship that did not end in decades, and here they want to do the same for some greedy people that I call vampires.
And more than 400 committees in different cities and municipalities in Colombia have voluntarily organized to promote the social reforms proposed by President Gustavo Petro. Following the Colombian president's call, the presidential advisor for the regions, Luz Maria Munera, announced that spontaneous mobilizations have occurred with the goal of promoting the initiative throughout the country. She explained that large and small groups are being formed, including students, housewives, and workers, distributed in the labor, education, health, and social sectors. The council will continue to travel around the country, explain to people what the popular consultation is and why it is being held. And in Bolivia, a new vaccination campaign was launched through the rapid monitoring system to detect infants and children who have not yet been immunized against a score of diseases. Our correspondent Freddy Morales with the details.
The so-called rapid vaccination monitoring was initiated to reach almost 60,000 children under 5 years of age who, for whatever reason, did not receive their vaccination doses last year.
It is in the urban areas where we are not achieving a higher coverage, but this is because of the high migration we have from urban to rural or vice versa. But generally in rural areas, all the families are well known by the health personnel. They know their name, their last name, how old they are, and they are more identified, but in urban areas it is more difficult.
Rapid monitoring will make it possible to evaluate immunization coverage in the 9 departments, and almost 4,000 brigadistas will be deployed in this campaign.
Our coverage is in the 75% range. We aim to raise that to 85 to 95%. That's our goal.
The campaign consists of checking, house by house, the status of children's vaccination records.
When we do a rapid vaccination monitoring, we go and look for children who might have escaped from that age group and who might be older. We would have to go and recover them, vaccinating these children, in order to avoid the risk of transmission of diseases such as measles, due to the epidemiological alerts that are issued at the international level.
Health professionals consider that the anti-vaccine campaign that manifested itself during the COVID pandemic has been overcome, which can be verified in daily consultations.
In this time, the COVID vaccines have been very important. Now I have had 7 patients who have passed COVID, but they are not in serious condition. They had to be taken to therapy as they were totally discomposed. Now it is like a cold, but they have to be treated. Vaccinations have lowered that level of lethality that COVID had.
Rapid vaccination monitoring is carried out in the country's 340 municipalities. The state provides the 12 doses to be applied between birth and 5 years of age, which prevent 20 diseases. Vaccinations are also offered free of charge for senior citizens and vulnerable groups against COVID and influenza.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
And on Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Marco Rubio, a ridiculous and pathetic man. He described him as such after commenting on Rutte's request to U.S. President Donald Trump to keep the organization out of Greenland affairs. The Russian diplomat claims that Rutte, who is supposed to look after the interests of European countries, is afraid to comment on the Greenland issue in the White House. In addition, Lavrov calls it a shameful phenomenon that NATO wants to look after the interests of Ukraine, which is not even a member of the alliance. We have now our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Financial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. In Ecuador on Tuesday, a containment dam located in the Capele River collapsed due to rains in the middle of the oil spill remediation works underway after the March 13th incident. State-owned company Petroecuador informed of the incident in the Cube sector in the locality of Esmeralda, stating that contingency teams have been immediately activated. The collapse has prompted the suspension of the San Mateo water treatment plant to prevent possible hydrocarbon contamination. The incident comes as President Noboa's government has reportedly tried to downplay the scope of the March disaster, which caused a spill of more than 25,000 barrels of oil. And in this regard, on Tuesday, a report from the Ecuador National Secretariat of Risk Management revealed that the March 13th accident along the Trans-Ecuadorian oil pipeline system caused the spillage of more than 25,000 barrels of oil. The figure coincides with a report of state-owned company Petroecuador and thus denies the assessment made by the government of President Daniel Noboa, whose Minister of Energy and Mines, Inés Manzano, said there were only 3,800 barrels spilled product of a sabotage. The incident is already considered the most serious ever recorded in the South American nation, causing the contamination of several rivers, leaving thousands of people without access to drinking water and impacting the livestock, agricultural, fishing, and tourism industries. And the forest fires that have been raging in southeast South Korea for the past 6 days have so far left at least 24 people dead. The Disaster Management and Safety Office said the fire, apparently caused by a spark from a lawnmower, has devastated more than 17,000 hectares and has left some 23,000 people evacuated. At the same time, 12 civilians have been seriously injured and another 14 have suffered minor injuries. The fire started in Sancheon County and spread to 2 other neighboring counties. The authorities are investigating the causes of the incident, while the Army has deployed some 5,000 troops and 146 helicopters to support the fire department in fighting the flames. And amid efforts to extinguish wildfires in the southeastern region, a water-carrying helicopter was confirmed to have crashed. The pilot died when the aircraft crashed near the city of Uiseong, one of the areas most affected by the flames. The National Firefighting Agency detailed that the forest fires destroyed more than 200 structures, forcing the evacuation of around 27,000 residents of the localities. The Palestinian National Council denounces the creation of a Zionist agency to push for the expulsion of the people of the Gaza Strip. This way, the president of the body, Rahui Fatou, affirmed that this evidences a policy of ethnic cleansing and called on International Criminal Court to take immediate and effective measures against the new plan. The Zionist occupiers' finance minister Bezalel Smotrich announced this week the approval of an office to organize voluntary transfer for Gaza residents who wish to move to third countries. The president of the Palestinian Council assures that these measures are incompatible with voluntary migration and denounces the genocide and the terrible massacres committed against the Palestinian enclave. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the wave of violence in the province of Ituri has left more than 200 people dead and nearly 100,000 displaced. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, more than 1 million people have fled their homes due to the armed conflict in the country. The action of armed groups in the east of the country hinders the delivery of humanitarian aid and forces the suspension of relief operations. In addition, in Kivu, the hostilities keep the civilian population at risk of sexual violence and, among other types of aggressions. And Sudanese authorities reported Tuesday that a new airstrike on Tora city in western Darfur claimed at least 54 lives. In this regard, the paramilitary forces had held the Sovereign Transitional Council responsible. The brutal attack had also left 23 wounded. Medical sources detailed half of the victims, dead and wounded, were women. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed concern about the lack of respect for the lives of civilians in this almost two-year conflict. And a severe HIV crisis is unfolding in Ethiopia's Tigray region following a devastating two-year conflict. Once a model for HIV prevention with a prevalence rate of 1.4%, Tigray now faces a more than double rate of 3%. The situation is particularly dire among displaced populations, where the prevalence is 5.5%, and survivors of sexual violence who experience rates as high as 8.6%. The war has ravaged Tigray's healthcare system, leaving only 17% of health facilities operational and severely limiting access to antiretroviral therapy and other essential services. The crisis has been exacerbated by U.S. aid cuts under the Trump administration, which have resulted in the dismissal of 5,000 healthcare workers and the cessation of vital support services for HIV patients. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on our social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.